Okay, back from the coast. Just like that. Boom. Now, where should I start today? Read emails first, rant last, or rant first, emails next? On the tooth, let's get right into about the tooth. I put out a request if there were any veterinarians possibly who might know what that tooth was. It was on top of that stump. And I got a very interesting reply from a veterinarian who sent these photos. I guess this is what they have in their clinics. Very interesting. Email says, carnassial tooth. Carnassial tooth. Some species of canine, probably larger in size. 3 roots, hard to extract without splitting the tooth. This is from a small animal veterinarian. Have extracted lots of these. Dr. Johnson, appreciate you big time. That sure looks like a dead ringer to me. How you guys think? And very interesting as well. Obviously, that looks to be possibly very hard to extract from the skull, as the roots seem to fan out a little bit, right? And the hole, which would make the exit hole a little smaller than the width at the farthest point of the root tips. Anyway, there you go. Ought to find. Is it overly curious to me? Not really, not myself. Not really. If somebody or something is leaving me a gift of a tooth, cool, thanks. Do I need to go out of my way to spend possibly thousands of dollars or help get somebody to do a DNA test on it? Not me. I'm good. So there you go. That's part of that little minor mystery is solved, I think. Now, what else? Quick question. Just going to share something here in case a lot of people here aren't familiar with what's going on here, or maybe you're confused or something. I am not a Bigfoot researcher. I'm a truth seeker and all truth with our existence. I am a freedom fighter. I'm a freedom seeker, number one. And when it comes to this topic crosses over into the majority of my life because I have been a lifelong professional outdoors person, as well as huge fan of the real world, which is the natural world to me. And my main motivation doing what I'm doing with this channel is to bring truth to the literally hundreds of thousands of people who've been affected by what they saw and didn't ask to see in the mountains or forests of the world. That's what we're doing. It's gained momentum, it's created a lot of attention, and it has a very substantial following. A large enough following that it's easy to look into it and look at other possibly related social media channels, and it turns out, without even trying or asking anybody to subscribe or promote in any way, this channel seems to be the #1 watch channel in the world when it comes to, possibly, the Bigfoot or Sasquatch topic, whatever you want to call them, and other unknown items, experiences, things being seen, terrifying moments for people around the globe. So that being said, a very kind person brought to my attention that possibly one of the people I recently invited to come here sounds like they may be caught up in the frickin' Bigfoot Sasquatch researcher, I hate you, I'm the best crowd, which is kind of sad because I try to keep the focus on all of the people. And it seems that if I ever veer off, way in the beginning especially, if I veer off and become associated with in any way some of the so-called names in the Bigfoot community, it bites me in the ass. And then I realize, oh my God, what a mistake that was. So I try to avoid any type of celebrity type, how should I say this? I never practice what I'm about to say, you guys, right? So we're all sitting around the coffee table. My lips will mesh up with my brain smoothly eventually. It's very easy for me to see people that want to be heard, need to be heard, and need to be in front of that lens. That's their #1 priority. That's their #1 concern. No matter how they deliver themselves, they think they are, what they're doing. It's easy for me to see them. They need a following. They need to be heard. They need to be the #1 listened to. And whatever their views are must be agreed with by their following. Whatever. I'm babbling. I avoid those type of people. I figure it out pretty quick and I just stay away. I want to concentrate on the people. The people are the most powerful energy force on the planet. The people are the best. The people are number one. You can't learn faster than learning from the people. End of story. What am I getting at? A little bit of a babble there. Why is it? Why is it that so many people who associate themselves with this topic go at each other's throat? Why is it? Why is it such a common theme when it comes to this topic? Possibly many other topics. Actually, it's probably every topic that's associated with human groups. It's the human ego, I guess, isn't it? But it just frustrates me to hear or see when individuals who are possibly gaining a lot of knowledge in this topic all of a sudden slide into that fucking zone of nobody knows more than me, I know the most, and everybody else is stupid, and that channel sucks, and that channel's full of bullshit stories and made up crap. And they start lashing out at each other and cannibalizing each other, and sadly making absolute embarrassing fools out of each other. My big question is, why? Why? What is it about this topic that does that to so many people? I don't get it. I don't get it. But anyway, there you go. I just had a handful of emails sent to me recently, even a voice recording of a conversation with somebody who I was looking forward to having on here, but they, for some whatever reason, they have trashed all of you and me and the channel. So, off the list they go. Back in the garbage pile with the rest of them. It's unfortunate, right? Okay, there's my open brain pouring out of my mouth. I hope I made sense. But I don't understand. I don't understand why the people associated with this topic. But one thing I'll share this. One common denominator I have seen and realized with all these types is it's the following. It's the following. If somebody seems to have more of a following than them, that seems to be the common denominator in them triggering on another channel. It's the competition, I guess. I don't know. For wherever that ladder is they think they're climbing up into the sky, it just doesn't see it. When I wonder what happens to them when they get to the top of that ladder and they figure out it wasn't leading anywhere. Right? That ladder you think you're climbing to get above everybody else, you're going to soon find out it ain't leading anywhere. You're wasting your time. Please, come back to the people. Be humble, be kind. Quit thinking. All right, that's enough. That's enough. How about some more caffeine? It's unfortunate and sad to watch people creating themselves and turning themselves into little monsters. It sucks. I feel bad for them. What's this? Per your request, info from chat that is mind-blowing. All right. Hello, Stephen. Following up with your request for a conversation I had with someone in chat. One of the other How to Hunt family members copied it, and you read it a couple weeks ago. The last segment was left out, and it is information people need to hear. This person I will call JB chimed in regarding my story that happened in northern Minnesota. In the early 80s, I saw what looked like some kind of monkey / sloth / lemur looking creatures in a tree. I asked if anyone had seen something similar, and someone responded. I refer to him as JB, and I believe he has indigenous heritage. He mentions Leech Lake, which is the third largest lake in Minnesota. Much of it is on Leech Lake Indian Reservation. Below is the response I received. Again, you read much of this, but the last part was left off, and it is mind-numbing. Excuse me, all right. JB2 Cindy. Thank you for sharing. I've seen / helped a lone individual, like you described in northern Minnesota, and around the same time period. I can tell you that it wasn't a juvenile forest person / Sasquatch. The description you gave caught my attention. It clicked when you mentioned lemur / sloth face. I can tell you this individual loved apples. It was a male. They got separated from his family when they came through a black abyss / portal. Did I read this? Humans captured him, held him captive. I also can tell you that he made it back to his family on the other side. Cindy, What do you feel it was? Was it older / bigger than what I saw? I'd love to hear more. JB. What I can say is that this happened in the early 90s around the Leech Lake Reservation. Some of the people involved are still alive. They are not of indigenous blood. They can and will do harm. They have so-called friends in high places. I feel that he was an entirely different being / cryptid that can't live in our world. They can be here for short periods of time. His appearance didn't resemble that of a forest person / Sasquatch, which to me resemble a chimp's face with human characteristics or human faces. They are heavier and have a sturdier build. The hair is usually brown / reddish / black, but not always. He was not in very good shape. His coat was short hair that was a really dirty gray color because of the conditions he was in. He was kept in a very dark room with limited mobility. He had reddish / orange eyes that glowed. Like you said, like Christmas lights. He was slightly smaller in size, about 1.5 to 2 feet. Head, torso, with lanky arms and legs. Estimate about the size of a small child aged 5 or 6. He had a scream / moan / howl that he would do about 10 a.m. every day. There were times he would hear the same call answered back multiple times. Cindy, this is so sad. I'm grateful he escaped. Did you see the portal? Your story is very thought-provoking. Did these beings communicate with you, or did someone else talk with them to get this information? JB, I'll try to answer your questions the best I can. It's hard to write as there is more to this. I can only give snippets. There are differences on what is a black abyss and what a portal / gateway is, in my opinion. One thing all has in common is that time goes slow or fast. The black abyss is an entity that is living. It has thought and voice. It speaks to some through mind speak / telepathy. It's usually in a pitch black area, bracket, forest, and bracket, or it could be a different setting. No light goes through, it's just silence. The temperature drops at times. You might hear a voice telling you to stop, go back. You might feel emotions. Fear is one of them. This entity can do harm. In a way, they are their own gatekeeper. Only those on the other side are allowed back through. Whereas the portal / gateway has a shimmering or transparent look. One kind has a gatekeeper that's flesh / blood on either side, and they are guarded. Another is step from one place to another. These are the ones that most cryptids, forest people, dogmen, etc. go through, and sometimes humans. These ones vary. All of them are dangerous. This being was already captured before I arrived at this place. He communicated through mind speak / telepathy in his own voice. I had no clue he was there. I just heard his vocals every morning and was told don't go outside during this time. I started wondering why there were so many apples in the house. I found it the hard way. I did something wrong and was put into a pitch black room with the door locked. This is where I met him. He told me what happened to him, that he needed to get back to the area that had the black abyss. This was over a course of some weeks. During that time, I tried to get him out in the sunlight healing as much as possible without being caught. He taught me a lot about different cryptids and other beings out there that I didn't know about. So, in a way, he was my teacher. I, the student. He returned to the black abyss. His return to the black abyss was a hard task to complete. I did have some human help. He went through. He had with him a couple sacks of apples. His fear was, would they accept him back on the other side? And they did. There were about 5 others on the other side waiting for him. End of conversation. Well, that sounds crazy. This person has more knowledge to share. I'm hoping you two will connect. Of course, his safety is a priority, for he knows some unsavory humans. I am hoping somehow we can learn from JB. I doubt JB and I live far from each other, if local is more tolerable. JB, reach out in chat and we'll figure something out. however we can make this happen with everyone's best interest and safety in mind. JB, please help us learn more about our dimensional world. Blessings to all, Cindy. A quick paragraph for me. All right. Appreciate you. That's quite the email, obviously, right? A lot of people are going to be going, huh? That's quite the email. There's a lot there to take in. But if you listen to every single person speaking here, every single flavor experience that's being reported here, then a lot of that can possibly mash up, right? So, don't shut your door between your ears automatically because you might hear something in a share that you can't handle. And just because you can't handle it, it doesn't mean it's not true. That's something that's tough for everybody to accept, right? Just because you can't handle it doesn't mean it's not true. That is such a frickin' good little sentence there. Now, before I forgot, I almost forgot. Here's a big one coming up here. So we arrived home yesterday, late yesterday. Yeah, we got home like 5 o'clock or something. Now get this one. So our sweet little teenager here, she has a very kind boyfriend. Good kid. It's been around for over a couple of years now. More city flavor. Now I'm going to describe a few details just so that we can relate them to possibly why maybe he had this experience and it just came out last night directly to me at the dinner table. Kind of blew me away because I was not expecting it, and I don't know how many times, and I've shared every time here, I come across somebody who's had the frickin' experience. Somebody's been around me or in my circle of friends or whatever for possibly numerous years each, and all of a sudden, boom. It's crazy. Now listen to this. So, how old is he now? This would put him when he's around 16 years old. I'm going to give you roughly just enough information to describe the person that this happened to. Because from what I'm learning so far, I do not believe ethnic background, age, activities in the outdoors. I don't think there is anything we can narrow it down to accurately guess who may be susceptible to having an experience. It seems to be, from what I'm learning from all of you, it seems to be anyone at any time. There is no commonality. If you take an average and look at all the people across the board, what do they have in common? Some have absolutely nothing in common except they're human beings walking upright and breathing. That's about it. We have every flavor of human being around the planet having the same experiences. Okay? So, what I'm saying is, I will say that he was roughly 16 years old. More city upbringing and existence on average than in the woods. Doesn't come from a fishing or hunting background at all. Does not. Just started fishing this last couple of years. Doesn't hunt. Parents, city, they live in the city. They like dirt biking, mountain biking, and going camping. That's it. Knowledge base on this topic? Nothing. Both him and his father listen to this channel. That's about it. But previously, I do not believe they had any knowledge of this topic and never went looking for the evidence or even giving this topic much energy at all. I'm just trying to give you the full, fairly accurate description of this person who had this experience before I share the conversation I had last night. So, got home and I put some attractant out across the road with trail cameras on because apparently, while we were gone, there was a big cat in the neighbor's yard again, and we heard some idiot that lives this way a little bit was feeding a cat and its kittens last year. And then when I wasn't home, Sarah and her daughter took pictures in broad daylight of a big cat laying down in the neighbor's front yard across the road. Everybody has pets. Everybody has their favorite dogs and cats here. This is going to end not so good for somebody. So anyways, we were talking about the cats last night at the dinner table. I'm not going to share names. We'll just say the boy's name is Bobby. Bobby. fires up and says, "Oh man, I had an encounter with a cougar one time and it was scary." And now I go, "What? No way. Where were you? Tell me about it." And he got fired right up, and you could see in his eyes he was going back to that moment, and he was just babbling. So he said that they had gone camping, him and his friend and his dad, I believe, and his mom, maybe other people, I'm not sure, but I know for sure both of his parents who I've met, and they're great people. And his friend, and went camping, I think he said roughly 30 kilometers or something, between 20 and 30 kilometers up the Mamquam Road out of Squamish. Now that is towards Indian Arm. And if you want to Google up Indian Arm, go ahead and do it. And you'll see where that area is. It's smack dab bullseye right in the zone, right? And he also mentioned there was tons of fish in the river too. No taken, so it was fall. Now listen to this. This is fresh off the plate last night at the dinner table. Now Bobby said, excitedly, he goes, "Oh yeah, I couldn't believe it," because he says we're in our tents. He said his dad was in his own tent, whatever feet away, parents, and he said that he heard growling from this cougar. I'm like, "No way." He goes, "Oh yeah, it was scary." And he also said, "And it pushed into my tent." I'm like, "What? No way." And I did not say anything. I did not, and I never do, say anything to allude to or steer somebody into saying, "Oh yeah, maybe it was a Bigfoot." I don't do that. I just listen, let him babble, let her rip, and take from what you will, and really listen. So I'm locked on him. I go, "No way. It was growling and pushing on your tent." He goes, "Oh yeah, I was so scared. Nobody was waking up. My dad wasn't awake." I'm like, "Holy shit." I go, How far in the tent did it push?" He went, about like that. Like just he pushed in until the side of the tent got kind of tight. I'm like, "Wow." I go, "Could you tell if it was his paw or his face that was pushing on the tent?" He goes, "Oh, it's definitely, I think it was paw, but way bigger than mine. Like it was way bigger than my hand." I'm like, "No way. Wow, that must have been freaking scary." And he's like, "Oh yeah." And he goes, "Look, I could show you what the growl sounded like right here." And then I was right away on his phone. I don't know what it was, but I could see the picture of a mountain lion, and then he kept on hitting on the different sounds of a mountain lion on his phone. And then he came to a growl. And then he said to me, he goes, "See, that's as close as it was, but it was way deeper. And you know what? I could feel it." I'm like, "What? What do you mean you could feel it?" He goes, "I could feel it growling. Like I could feel it inside of me. It was me. I could feel it inside me when it was growling." And now I'm like, "Oh shit. No shit." I go, "Wow, that's terrifying. What'd you do?" He goes, "Well, I got these bear bangers. I was shooting bear bangers outside and it didn't do nothing." And then my dad finally woke up and he couldn't hear anything. And then he said, I forget what he said his dad said. I wasn't really too listening to that part. By now, I'm just locked onto the intimate details, right? But his dad said to go back to sleep, or he said his dad went back to sleep. Didn't think too much of it. Typical though, right? You can't feel bad for that. I mean, that is your average, on average, that's your typical reaction to other people when this is going down. Now listen to this one. Then he said that the next day, what happened? His parents left and went somewhere. But he said that it was breaking huge sticks around the camp walking. He said you could hear it. Crack, crack. And I'm like, "You could hear the cougar stepping?" He goes, "Oh yeah." And it was really loud. Like he was breaking real big sticks. I'm like, "No way." Like, what time was that? Oh, and so I don't know if I mentioned or not, but he said that it was 3 a.m. when the cougar was growling at him and pushing his tent in. And he said that when the footsteps were hitting the ground, and he said it sounded like a huge, he said this cougar was huge. It was breaking the biggest sticks. I go, "What time was that at?" He goes, "Broad daylight. Right in the middle of the day. It's just me and my buddy, my dad, my mom had left." Right? And then I think they stayed, the parents came back, the dad came back one more time, and they stayed one more night, and he heard the growls again and felt them and heard huge sticks breaking all around camp. And then they got up in the morning and said, "We're getting the hell out of here and never coming back." End of story. And I did not say, "You experienced a Sasquatch." I didn't say it, and I still haven't said it, and I don't need to. We'll let the boy go through believing it was a cougar. Probably better off from him because he's young. It scared the living shit out of him. And I didn't need to go slamming this reality into his face right off the bat, even though they know about my channel and what I talk about. I don't know, it's a toughie. It's a tough one because you do not want the younger generation, you don't want anybody to be more scared and have their potential outdoor activities stripped from them. Boom, at this young age. Maybe we'll break it to him a little gently and explain to him what can happen and what does happen, and I'll explain to him that you don't hear cats. You don't hear cougars. And they do not growl and vibrate your ribcage, and they don't break sticks. Big sticks, they don't do it. And then maybe I will just gently fill him in on what does. And that on average, not too many people get hurt from that scenario. And that, it's a tough one, right? It's like when I talk to people about this topic and they have a keen interest, but they're not up to speed. And then I have to explain to them that this group of people here were on basically the 30th flight of stairs up in gaining knowledge. And when I take something like this, I have to explain to them, you're at the first step. So it's kind of unfair and overwhelming for me to just launch you from your first step where you are, skip the 30 flights, and drop on you what we have come to conclusions with at the 30th flight. It would freak the shit out of you. Right? It's tough. It's tough, but we're doing it. It's tough to be put in the position of educating people on what they should have been educated on from day one. That's a tough place to be in when you're not professionally trained in a way to be a teacher, right? Especially when it comes to these topics that we have been raised to not accept as valid. Whew. There you go. There's my spiel. So if you guys, I would encourage you to Google up on your maps, whatever you Google, I don't care, just go online. And have a look at Indian Arm. I've been out there. There's been a lot of sightings around there. A lot. I've been out there. Sarah and I went out there. Saw fish in the river. Made some videos out there. The Mamquam at Indian Arm. There you go. Another person in my immediate circle has had an experience. And there's not much similar there with there's just nothing there connecting the boy with anybody else in similar attributes, habits, activities. There's nothing there. It's just an innocent city boy camping, dirt biking. And something comes up, presses on his tent, and growls and rattles his rib cage, and then paces around their camp in broad daylight, snapping branches. Why? Right? I don't need to know what. Well, I guess we know what, but why? Why? It's so confusing. Why? Why out of all those, you can look at Indian Arm, look at those thousands of wide open country, coastal mountains and rivers and lakes. Why would you go do that to these boys? They don't hunt, they don't fish, they don't log, they don't cut trees down, they don't do anything in the woods that would even be considered as bad in a way to somebody. I don't know, I'm babbling, but I just don't understand why. Why does this happen? Why would you single out these kids and do that to them? I don't understand that part. Why? Now, who's next? Ramble bamble, but that's a first-hand story. It's a little better than reading, isn't it? Maybe. In a way. What's this one? Alright, here we go. These are all from the recent category in the inbox. I flip back and forth. A lifetime of weird. Couldn't that be the title for every one of our lives right now? Hi, Steve. It's very challenging to put lifetime experiences into one story/email. I was 9, basically unsupervised, running with neighborhood kids in rural northern Ohio in the early 70s, playing in the woods around our small neighborhood. There were stories in the papers about oversized beings seen by farmers standing a foot or more above the corn in September, which translates to about 8 feet. The story came from an area about 50 miles away. I was warned to get home before dark, and that was the end of it. No one thought it was more than a hoax. There were 9 of us playing freeze tag in the field. when we moved into the woods to get cooled off. Nikki was telling stories she had heard at school about things that happened at Lover's Lane, which is in the same woods, but on the opposite edge from where we were. She's trying to shock us. She was trying to shock us with sexual details, and we were either sitting on the ground near a creek or milling around, pulling up dandelion heads to blow at each other. She suddenly stopped speaking. Looking around, she said, "Very funny, Sean. You can pretend to be asleep, but I'm not fooled." He poked his head around the tree. He poked his head around the tree, but the snoring sound continued. Nikki was standing in front of me, and I was leaning against a very large fallen tree, which I was too small to climb up and sit on. She turned to look at me and followed the sound of the snoring. But she looked past me, and the snoring abruptly stopped. Her face went white with fear. She was the meanest, toughest girl I knew, and most boys were terrified of her. When she screamed, I turned to look behind me, and she grabbed me, shouting, "Run! Run! Get the babies out of here! Run! Run! Get the babies!" Two of the kids with us were only 2 years old, and were supposed to be in our care for the afternoon. There were 7 kids, ages 5 to 12, plus 2 littles. Who would hurt any of us just playing in the woods? I had to look. But all I saw was a top of a pointy head covered in black hair. I was running, but only because she insisted. I couldn't understand why we were supposed to be afraid of one hairy person who may have just been an old drunk in the woods. Nikki wouldn't let anyone near those woods and insisted we all go home. We did. I tried to talk with her about it. She said, "I don't know if you will believe me, but it wasn't a person." I asked her if it was a bear, and she shook her head no. She said it had a black man's face, but covered in hair. After that day, she changed. She became withdrawn and much less combative, as if she was carrying some hidden fear. I moved a few months later to another state and learned she developed an extremely rare condition that made her age at an alarming rate. She died 7 years ago to the day from when she saw the creature, as she called it. As I grew up and learned about Bigfoot, I began to believe that was the creature she mentioned. That's a sad ending to that, her ride, isn't it? Excuse me. I had 2 sets of adopted grandparents who each had farms in northern Indiana, and I loved wandering around the farms alone. Sitting outside in the fall, I was admiring a grove of trees when someone started poking their head out and pulling it back as if they were hiding from me. I saw it in 2 locations, but thought it weird because their faces were solid black, like moving silhouettes. But it was dusk, and I was not sure if they just had hoodies pulled lightly over their faces. Pulled tightly over their faces. They started moving from tree to tree as if daring me to join them. I felt like they were talking to me, saying, "Come," but it didn't. But it seemed in my head and not my ears. Suddenly, my grandma burst out of the door and said, "Get in here this minute. You're not safe." At the other grandparents' farm, they had a lot of livestock: pigs, cows, chickens, 3-acre pond full of fish, and plenty of cats, and always a dog. I was around 10 years old and swinging in an old rope swing. The pigs always squealed or grunted after they were fed. I was enjoying all the farm sounds when I got a strange feeling that I was being watched. At that same time, all the animals got quiet. The only sound was the wind in my ears, and an awful smell filled the air. I knew the particular smells of various animals, such as pigs, chickens, geese, cows, horses, goats, sheep, skunk, and a possum. But this was like sulfur, unwashed body, and strong ammonium pea smells mixed together. I felt like someone was in the cornfield across the way. I stared real hard, looking for the person watching me, when all of a sudden, a row parted, and I saw the back of a hairy head bent to hide itself, just below the top of the corn stalks, walking away from me. I jumped down, ran in the house, and told Grandpa, who grabbed his gun and headed out the door saying, "I'll get him this time." Grandma explained that he was mad over a missing piglet, a small sick sow that went missing, and the neighbor's best rooster that had all disappeared in the last 2 weeks. He came back scratching his head and called the police. He said he found some Bigfoot prints in the field, but couldn't figure out how anyone would go barefoot and get away so fast. They made me promise to stay indoors the rest of my stay. By 1992, I'm married with 2 little girls of my own. I had a huge garden and lived out in the country in rural Georgia, near a large lake. My husband worked the night shift, and I learned to enjoy the quiet evenings alone to finish chores undisturbed. I was emptying the dishwasher when I heard in my head, "I'm here." Simultaneously, I had the feeling of being watched with every hair in my head standing up. All the windows had blinds except the kitchen window. I stood tall and refused to give 1 inch to fear. I looked straight at the window but saw nothing. The window was 8 feet off the ground, so there shouldn't be anything there anyway. And tap, 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 right on the window in front of me. I jumped involuntarily and then yelled at it to go away in the name of Jesus, and it was gone, and all was peaceful. The next day, there were partial naked footprints in the yard by the window and in the muddy part of the garden where I had some beautiful peppers and tomatoes half eaten on the ground. I lived near a nature preserve with a lake in Michigan. My 3 beautiful girls were teens and loved playing in our pool surrounded by woods even in the evenings, using the big backyard spotlights. There'll be a plane out back. The girls come in very angry one evening, saying some creep was throwing things at them in the pool and whooping at them. They laughed at first, thinking it was a friend who simply wanted to join them. They called for the friend to come to join them, but just got a creepy whoop in reply. They tried to ignore him, but it just started getting scary, with tree knocks and bigger rocks until a tree was knocked over. Instinctively, I knew that that was no neighborhood boy. No boy would say no to my gorgeous girls. One afternoon, a few days later, I was an aspiring writer working on a book at home when I heard rocks landing on the porch where I worked. Another day, a present of acorns and flowers was outside my glass bedroom sliding door on the porch, laying perfect as a picture. Then a few weeks later, I heard a crash on the roof, and giant footsteps ran across the steep 3-story A-frame roof and bounded off the other end into huge tree loops about 15 feet away from the house. I investigated but never saw a soul. I started walking in the nature preserve and regularly heard someone walking with me, but never saw anyone. I asked my daughter to join me and told her some of these stories, and she asked, "Mom, so is Bigfoot real? Then where is he?" She barely uttered the words when the air reverberated with the loudest roaring yell that shook the trees and had every dog for over a mile yelping in terror. She grabbed me, and it was like time stood still for what seemed like an unnatural amount of time for a yell. I was not afraid, for I knew he was simply answering her question. When it finally ended, she looked at me in terror and said, "What was that?" I said, "That was the answer to your question." And then I felt the quaking in me begin, like a strange afterquake, and I physically shook for the rest of the mile walk home. Adrenaline dump. I moved to Tennessee. I lived in a house on the edge of the Cherokee National Forest near a forest creek. I kept having the feeling each evening of being watched as I sat on the screened-in porch. I made a bonfire with my husband in the backyard, and we both heard footsteps coming out of the woods and heard things being thrown at us from behind us. We heard a huge belch. The next morning on my way to work, I found a giant handprint on the window of my car that I photoed. The print was bigger than my husband's hand by over 1 inch, and he is 6'6". No, I do not believe it is the same creature following me. Yes, I do seem to attract them, but I believe it's because I'm deeply spiritual and a follower of Yeshua. I believe these are the beings described in the book of Jasher, who dared to try to mix human blood with other creatures, and God turned them into part-ape beings. I believe they are part human and do procreate. I believe they are deeply attracted to female humans which makes them appear benevolent to women. They deserve to be respected, given space, and when we should see that, and we should see that some are harmful and some not, as with any group of humans. I work in the field of psychology. Please don't share my name, since my colleagues are not as open-minded as they would have us to believe about accepting the differences of others. Thanks, Steve. Holy it! I don't think I didn't share your name, did I? No, I didn't. All right. And your name is safe with me. I absolutely appreciate you sending us that email. Big time. Big time. Number one reason why I'm thankful is because there's going to be somebody else out there in the world having the exact same shit going on, and it's screwing them up. And to hear you coming forward, honestly, is helping them. Thank you. Now, what should I do here? I don't even know how long I've been sitting here. I got a lot to do. What's this one? Should I read this? It's not too long. All right, here we go. This is titled, Stand in My Boots. Dear Steve, I owe an apology to my twin brother and some others. Mine is not the only story or a measure of a man. I know how it feels to not be believed. I love your saying, I wasn't there. Number one, early 1980s, Strawberry Canyon four-wheel drive trail between US 50 and Highway 89, Caples Lake, Caples, hunting with my buddy at about 8,000 feet. We left camp this Saturday morning, went around a small stand of birch into tall grass that smashed down. Looked like either all the deer had left the highlands or valleys below. No deer all day, moving. That afternoon, having lunch, my buddy spilling sardine juice on his overalls. Great to cover that human scent, right? As went out for the afternoon. He said, I'll be over where you found earlier under that tree, okay? I found a big boulder on hillside. There's a pine tree right on the uphill side. That was the only way up onto this boulder. Excuse me. I'd been there for maybe 45 minutes to an hour when I caught this faint fish smell. Laughing to myself, thinking it's my buddy trying to sneak up on me. Then hear a step and stop, pause. Then the wall of smell hit. Dead salmon, skunk, wet dog, and death. Another step, stop. Then a rifle shot from across to where my buddy is hunting. At that point, I'm not facing off with this thing with a 30-30. Off the downhill side of the boulder I go, about 12 feet or more. Didn't shoot myself or break a leg, thank God. I got to my partner. I said I heard a rifle shot. He said it wasn't him. It was past him and across the hill. No deer anywhere the next day either. Most Sunday mornings he slept in. When I would return, he had gotten just many deer, was always his joke. Number two, following weekend, I had to take my little brother with me as my buddy tapped out. We camped up in Blood Alley, as to what the Rangers had named it. Told my twin brother and four-wheel drive club a story of a couple that was torn to pieces. The story came up after the fact. We got camp set up and out in the forest just before last shooting light. Fog settled in on us. Ate and settled into tent. Told him anything he didn't frozen, bring it in. I read it the way it's typed. Left tennis shoes outside. Yep. 4 or 5 inches. I had a dream while the tent was 4 inches in my face. What? I woke up. All right. Total typos there. Yep. 4 or 5 inches. I had a dream. The tent was 4 inches from my face. I woke up and was 4 inches off my face. Meaning, I think he meant the tent was pushed in. Okay, it's snow. I go out, still snowing. Only light is the lantern in the tent. As I'm pulling a rope, taut for the tent, something is across the creek walking around. I can hear it loud and clear. Step and crunch in the snow. I heard this plainly over the sound of the creek. Then the lightning started. We pack up. Now we have to get through the creek. CJ5 with open axles, one front wheel and rear wheel drive. It took me 3 tries to get up a snowy bank. It's 4 in the morning. All right, so what I gather is you guys are out camping, hunting. You're in a tent. It's puking snow and it's pushing the sides of the tent in. So you get up to pull the tent tighter, which is going to help the snow slough off, right? Then you heard this thing walking around. Number 3, yes, I have returned there since. This time to find, not up top, but down at the road going in. You pass Lover's Leap Trail and Strawberry Canyon Trail. My work buddy and his friend. My buddy and I are armed. His buddy armed with an SLR camera. Hiked in past vehicle barricade. They found a double-step print. I showed them the claw marks. As we continued, they saw green limbs and green needles on the ground next to a flat boulder with rocks stacked on top and on top of each other. That is when we heard what sounded like a child playing and laughing next to the creek. We whispered, "You hear that?" It stopped. It's now late afternoon. We're in a canyon and soon to lose light because of the ridges on both sides. Then we heard a 500-pound bird whistle on the other side. Then on the other bird, same call on the other. This continued as well. This continued as we were walked out of there. One time to our left, we heard a rock clack. Did you hear that? This went on until we got back to the crossing, which we have traversed all these big boulders. Number 4, not my story. Months later, they would go overnight to a place closer to Yosemite called Cabbage Patch. They went into the town of Arnold for supplies, beer, etc. Early afternoon, returning, they found the logging road riddled with rocks and footprints going up the soft bank and uphill. Yes, that 3 phones ago. That's how it's typed. There's always some typos, but no big deal. We're getting the gist of it, right? Number 5, not my story. Alpine Meadows tracked 5 miles above Colfax, California, 3,000 feet, Sierra Nevada foothills. Wife home at night. I'm at work. Dogs going nuts. Something turning the door now. It has no lock on it, but the door has a deadbolt lock. Yes, I have caught black bears on the porch before, but they knock over the cylinder blocks around the trash can. Yes, I have a friend who is a Korea War vet, 82nd Airborne. Never had to go the Korea. Gives me crap every time I wear a Bigfoot sweatshirt or t-shirt. Let's just say I have a hat too. It lets him know where he stands at. Urinal. He tries to give me crap about it too. Check your 6, Gary. Okay, Gary. Got it. There's a few typos in there, man. We're not all professional writers like the lady who wrote in previous to you. She's a writer. There's a difference, right? I'm not a professional writer. But we got you. We totally got you. Okay, one more. One more, and I'm going to get my ass in gear. This is titled My Encounter. Hey there, Steve. I wrote into you like a year ago about my encounter. I didn't write it very well. I'm just going to rewrite my story the best I can. Note, I don't care if you use my name or not. And I forgot most of my encounter by now, so here goes nothing. My name's Caden. I'm a 15-year-old kid and now live with my divorced father. I was 12 when the encounter happened and it was just starting to turn night. I was camping with my family up at Bryan Head, Utah, on the side of a mountain. I had my tent set up and everyone in my family was starting to go to bed, including me. It was getting dark fast and I was laying in my tent using my flashlight to mess around with a spider crawling on the roof of my tent. We all did, when all of a sudden my flashlight dies because I was using it too much. It was past midnight by the time my flashlight died, and I was scared the entire time because I thought I kept hearing a stick snapping sound, like something was slowly walking to my tent. And being the young kid I was, I kept trying to hide my sleeping bag, trying to make myself think there was nothing there. When I hear the snapping stop for a bit and I think it's safe, so I peek out of my sleeping bag for a moment and see a huge humanoid-looking creature staring down at me through my tent. I couldn't make out any features of the figure because it was pitch black outside of my tent at the moment, so I start to think, holy shit, and hide my sleeping bag again for a while, when eventually I get hot in my sleeping bag and have to look, and the creature I saw was gone. At the moment I thought I was just hallucinating, but now I realize there was no hallucination. I saw that night. I recommend that if anyone hearing this has an encounter, that you share with Steve. I may only be a 15-year-old kid, but I know a lot. And there's more stories out there. The more proof and evidence we have of these creatures existing, even if the government tries to suppress this information, just like aliens, we get enough information out and they might just admit that the Sabe truly exist. And there you go, young man. I appreciate you big time for sending that again, resending it. Appreciate you huge. And I hope you're speaking openly with your friends and filling them in and getting them to speak forward. And just so you know, and you can pass this on to your friends if you understand what I'm throwing down. We don't need anything from the people who call themselves the government. All right, man? You don't need anything from the government. Nothing. The only people that need is the government from you. Without you, they're nothing. And you only need to acknowledge this topic with the people, all your friends and neighbors and your coworkers, the people you care about and trust, right? That's it. And those are the same people you're going to learn from in life. You're not going to learn anything from the government. The government today, sadly, is made up of criminals. All right? It's a sad truth, but it's truth. Okay, man? So please, if you can, each time you may find yourself thinking that you need the government to acknowledge this shit, no, you don't. No, you don't. Try to, if you can, turn that automatic thought in your head around and realize they need from you. That's it, okay? And if anything, the only thing they will try to do is keep you from gaining knowledge and becoming aware and smart and a free soul during this lifetime. That's what they don't want you to do. They don't want you to have this knowledge and other knowledge. They don't want you to seek freedom and being a true free human being. Okay, man? There's my babble. Now, that's it for email sharing, you guys. In case my voice ultimately annoys the shit out of you, if it does, well, you're kind of weird for being here, aren't you? Right. There you go. I got a lot I could share, a lot I could babble about. I'm kind of in the mood too, maybe, I don't know. But I'll try to keep to a low roar. And now, one quick note for all, and I wish everybody would realize this and see it clearly when it comes to all the people dying on the planet today, innocent people, is it does not matter who I think or who you think is possibly your enemy, my enemy, our enemy, or not, who possibly is the guilty party when it comes to starting a war. It doesn't matter. I want to point this one thing out, and this is all I'm talking about right now. I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about who's guilty or not when it comes to starting a war. I don't care. I do not care at all. What I want, hopefully, for everyone to see clearly and care about is this fact that every single global politician who participates in by either sending our children to die in a war, sending money to promote a war, fund a war in any way, speak pro-war in any way. Take note, 100% of those people who do that have never been killed in a war, are not getting killed in any wars, and their children do not go to war and get killed. But they start, promote, and fund these wars. Okay? Take note of that one. Aside from who may you think is the starter of anything, just try to find a politician today who has died in a war. Try to find a politician today whose kids have died in a war. All right? And then, if your brain will allow you to, take a look at how many people died. All right? One conclusion I've come up with for myself is, if all of the government people involved in contributing to any war today, if all those individuals are swinging from a branch right now, the planet would be a very happier place and nobody would die. That's a fact. All right? So any of you who think you're upset with me on my stance on any wars today, kick that feeling and kick that knee-jerk aside and try to focus on who is actually dying today. It's innocent people. All right? Makes me upset, makes me mad. If I could, I'll tell you flat out, if I had the skills and the funds, I would put together an elite team and I would go around the globe making all those political monsters swing from branches. That's what I would dedicate my life to if I had the resources in a second. But I guess all I can do right now is speak out loud, right? The people who create, fund, support these wars are evil, evil people. I watched a video the other day, caught my attention on the ferry when we were coming home, of a young man. I'm not even going to say which side he's on in the works, it doesn't matter. A young man in uniform, can't even call him a man, he looked like a boy, visibly shaken, speaking to his phone, making a video message to his mom, apologizing to his mom because he promised her he'd be back sooner. And then he had to admit to her that it's not looking like he's ever coming back. And he had to make that effing video on his phone to send to his mom. And that made it online. It really hit me home yesterday. It made me very, very, very sad and angry. And it made me just want to seek out and destroy all parties involved, which includes my government. I shouldn't say my government. It includes the criminals who are stealing from every human being here in Canada, the US, Britain, France, Russia, the Ukraine, Africa, Australia. All those politicians are enabling hundreds of thousands of innocent people's children and families to be killed every single day. He should stop. And all those people who are responsible for that, they need to lose. They need to lose something too. They need their family tree chopped off at the roots. There you go. Nope. This isn't sparking out a debate and whose fault it is. There's no excuse today. There's no excuse. No excuse. There you go. War is stupid. The positions of people in government are all taken by criminals. Let's face it, today, if you were to seek a career in politics today and you succeed, you're basically a fucking psychopath and a criminal today. Smart people, smart, intelligent people obviously are not getting included in politics, are they? And being smart doesn't mean you got a lot of money, you're successful in business. Smart is meaning respect for all people and the environment, life, quality of life, freedom, happiness, having a rockin' out lifetime and having fun. Right? That's what smart people concentrate on, not money. I'm really babbling. I'm going to leave this in the video. Take it from Wait, will it leave it? Share my story at howtohunt.com. I want you to share your truth with the people here through me or somewhere else. I don't care where, but just make sure you share it and get it off your chest. And don't be scared of human beings. Our reality is a lot more than we've been raised to handle. A lot more. So there you go. Make sure you do something you love to do this weekend, you guys. Make sure. If I get hit by a logging truck tomorrow, my last sentence and message to the world would be, make sure you do what you love to do. At all costs.